Hello, everyone. Welcome to the virtual event space here at Unabridged Bookstore. We're so excited to have you all tonight. While people are still getting connected, I'll give just a few housekeeping things to keep in mind. Even though this is a virtual event, it is entirely possible that you may be seen and heard by other people attending tonight. So please be on your best behavior and be courteous to all those who are involved, and especially to our two guests tonight. We are so excited to have Dan and Sage with us this evening. If you have not already had a chance to look at the book or to get your copy, I'm dropping in the chat now a link to our website where you can see some more information about the book, and you can also order a copy from us if you're interested. Again, we are excited to have the author and the illustrating team behind I Am Not a Wolf here tonight with us. I Am Not a Wolf is based on the immensely popular Twitter account, and it is an interactive story that follows you, the reader, as you go through. We're excited to have the writer behind the book, Dan Sheehan, with us tonight. Dan is a writer from Chicago who now lives in LA. He is the creator of the original Twitter account. His writing has also been featured in Playboy, McSweeney's, The Onion, Clickhole, and other places. Dan is also the co-creator of the storytelling show and podcast We Still Like You. Joining Dan for the conversation tonight is Sage Coffey, a small non-binary critter living it up in Chicago. Since 2016, they've edited Sweaty Palms, a comic anthology about anxiety. They've also done work for Comics for Choice, Sturdy Diamonds, the Dandelion and Wine Collectives, The Sun and the Wayward Wind, Cards Against Humanity, Def Jam Entertainment, The Nib, and Adult Swim. So we're excited to have both of them here with us tonight. Join me in offering a virtual welcome to these two to talk about I Am Not a Wolf.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
This is fun. You can see everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces. Hello to everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. The way Sage and I went about doing this is we took to the internet a little bit before the event started and gathered some questions from people that wanted their questions answered. Some folks couldn't make the event and had questions. Some folks might be here or on their way here. So if you hear your question, congratulations. If you don't, there's going to be a little Q&A at the end. So, you know, it's all is not lost just yet. So I guess to start it off, this one is about the internet origins of the Wolf account and the story itself. Sage and I are both very online people, so I feel like we can both definitely talk about how the internet has affected our careers. Like for me personally, obviously the Wolf account was the root source material for the book. It was like where the character came from. The character like technically came a little before that. I made a fake OkCupid profile for a wolf pretending to be a man when I was in college. They got taken down after like 3 hours.
That's so interesting. I never knew that, actually.
Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, it was.
No, I didn't know that because like I am that person on like Tinder and OkCupid who will actually like swipe on those profiles and be like, "Tell me about yourself."
My big MO when I was using dating apps, especially in the early days, was just to goof my way through it. Like even past the wolf stuff, like one time I just edited a photo where I tripled the length of my legs and said I was 6'10".
Oh my God.
Because everyone tells you that you're supposed to lie about your height on dating apps. So I used to say I was 6'10" tall with this very clearly Photoshop picture where like it was so tall that my head was barely in it anymore.
Oh my gosh, perfect.
And so the wolf was a goof like that, and that's like where the character came from. Like the paragraphs of the OkCupid profile were in all caps, and it was like in the style that the character would eventually tweet in. It was just, it was basically jokes like, about how hard it is for this wolf to open doors and things like that, but like also constantly trying to like change the conversation and bring it back to dating. And so that was like where it started for me. And then obviously like the Twitter account sprung out of that and has been going for a handful of years. I found that we both were kind of in this period where social media lets you do a lot more, I feel like, than it does now. Like I feel like you could really try anything in the early internet. Like you're definitely somebody who has put a lot of their work out online and with like the help of was it a similar experience for you where you were kind of just like trying everything, or
Yeah, for me, I feel like my entire career can be summed up as like, I'm gonna do what I want. I'm gonna do what I funny, and I'm gonna do what I think is good. And if other people also think it's funny and also think it's good, that would be pretty good.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool if people would like me. Um, but yeah, pretty much I would just continuously. And the thing is, like Twitter specifically, I started my Twitter in like 2012, so I was like basically still a child who shouldn't have had a Twitter account.
Yeah, I
Luckily,
started mine in like '08. I
oh
was 17
wow.
years old, I think. So I have been on it for my entire adult life, which is not a good sentence.
Yeah, same here. Like Twitter specifically for some reason is
I went to a college that I took a lot of journalism classes, and they encouraged people to get it because everyone thought that it was going to, and it did turn into like a very important journalistic platform. It's just then the rest of it was so aggressively unprofessional that it's funny that Twitter was part of my homework for years. But they were like, go post on Twitter, like learn how it works. And so I was using it way earlier than I think a lot of other people my age, to the point where like my early tweets were just like gonna go to the dining hall and stuff. Like I wasn't trying to do anything.
yeah.
I
Well,
used it
that's
like,
the thing is like not a wolf. I feel like I saw on Twitter before I met you as a person.
really. I feel like we met
Yeah,
right
I
around
feel like
up.
I feel like when we met, because I had Twitter while I was in college and I didn't
Yeah,
move to
yeah.
Chicago until after college. Um, and I feel like it was one of those character accounts that like no matter your circle, it would like breach just a little bit. And I'm
Just
finding that on Facebook now as well. Yeah, where it's just like, all right, here's the wolf.
it was a lot like that.
Um,
It was because I didn't really have any grand plans for it at the start beyond just making my friends laugh, where it was like a character that I'd done this like OK Cupid bit for, and I'd like written a couple like goofy little things that I posted on like Instagram and Twitter back in like my late college years, like right after I graduated around that time. And like years later, while I was doing stand up, a friend of mine was like, that was really funny. You should do that again. And like, it was like stand up is it requires so much time, and it requires you to be physically in a space. And so when you're not doing it, you feel like you're wasting your time. Like you feel like, oh, I could be doing more. I could be doing more. And with social media, like for better or for worse, you can always be on it. And so it felt like this way that I could kind of always be writing. And at the time, it felt like a place where you could really like try to play out a weird story on the internet over the course of like, in my head, it was going to play out over like, 5 or 10 years at the start. And like now it's been on there about that long. It's been there for like 6 or 7 years now. But the idea of having a larger narrative definitely kind of fell by the wayside, I think, as time went on.
yeah, I feel like because social media moves so fast, it's hard to keep a regular narrative that's not just an ongoing gag, like Coffee Dad, I think is a good
Yeah.
example of that, where it's like coffee, coffee, coffee. Oh, I'm remembering this horrible accident that my children were in. Coffee, 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 and you can kind of do that same quote unquote gag over and over and over again. It's the same with comics as like social media as a platform for experimentation, because people have done like choose your own adventure comics.
Yeah.
Or like, vote for the next panel, things like that. Yeah, it's really interesting. And like you see a little bit of that happening with Instagram now too, where like when you swipe a panel, it'll like bleed into the next panel as like one solid illustration or line. Yeah, it's really interesting how like important social media was to both our careers, as far as like I feel like it needed to be there in order for both of us weirdos to kind of be heard, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
It's definitely, it's a love-hate relationship for me, because I feel like I have to acknowledge like my entire career sprung out of what I was doing on social media. And then all of my goals moving forward are not really based in social media like at all. And so it's like, wanting more from longer form writing, and wanting more like permanence to the things that I make. And then just the fact that social media has changed a lot. I'm not sure you could start a weird character account on Twitter and have it pick up that same sort of traction that the Wolf did. Like it felt like a very like lucky time and place. And I feel like
Yeah.
in a way, I feel like we both got that with social media as a whole, where it was just like we were there during the like early weird days. It's almost sort of like, I don't know, it feels like finding a band where it's like at the start they're trying all this like experimental stuff and then they like hit it big and then
Yeah.
it's like social media was like that, where it was like at first it was just like, I don't know, it's a message board and you can type things into it.
It's like live journal, but faster.
Yeah, and like 10 years later, they're like, okay, so we've listened to your thoughts and we have some sheets we think you're really gonna love for your bed. If you don't like those, swipe over 3 and you're gonna see like algorithmically we've found out like which person from your past makes you feel the perfect mixture of nostalgia and anger, and we're gonna show you that.
Yes, oh my gosh. And you can mute them and you can unfollow them and do everything, and they'll still pop up in your who you should follow.
Oh yeah, just like, hey, check them out. Take a little peek. They're right there. They're always gonna be there.
I think that's something that I actually like about the wolf a lot, is that he has a lot of anger in him.
I think there's like a deep frustration in the character just trying to figure out all this stuff that seems like it should be easy, right? Like just taking a bus.
Yeah.
Tour.
Well, and I feel like that's such a thing about, there's something to be said about that and like living in poverty, where like those small inconveniences build up over time and cause a lot of stress over time, right?
Totally.
Like it's not just this one instance. And of course, like in the framework of the story, like, oh, it's a wolf, it's funny, but like there is definitely a connection to something grander there.
Yeah, well, I think like around the time when I started writing Most in the character, I remember this very distinct moment where I was working this temp job. It was customer service, and it was just like in general real rough because the pay was very low. It was a long commute, so I would spend.
And it's customer service.
It's customer service. You're getting screamed at the entire time, and like when you're working those jobs, like you start to just divide your life up into like how many hours you're spending on things. And so it's like I would spend an hour of real time and then money time getting to work, like getting to and from work. And like I remember it was like my first week doing this job, and I got done with it, and I was just like so frustrated by like all these different things that I felt like were actively conspiring against me, just like doing these little tasks you have to do to live. And I like saw my parents for dinner, and I like blurted it out. I was just like, this is crazy. Like, it's crazy that you have to do this and you have to do this. And then like next week I have to do it all again. And they were just like, yeah, that's pretty much, that's how it works.
That's life.
And I remember just being like, oh, geez, that's not ideal. And I think that was kind of the time the characters started to really come together, because it was just realizing that these things that like are supposed to be uncomplicated are oftentimes like needlessly complicated, especially when you get into like the social dynamics of a workplace.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to work a lot of those like big office-y jobs? Or
no, I've never worked in an office before. I'm the other side, where I'm like all restaurants and retail and stuff like that. Where I could
ever worked at fired me. I was so bad.
Well, like eventually, so I would always start in the front, and then slowly they realized that I have enough leadership skills to work in the back and like manage myself. It's like a building trust thing. My favorite job that I've had was yelling in the kitchen. That I would be like, all right, we gotta get like, you gotta get this on, you gotta get this on, this needs to go out, we gotta hurry this needs this needs this, like telling the chefs kind of what to do.
I was always too spacey. I would like forget what I was doing. One time I was working a job and like a big box fell on my head, and I'm pretty sure it was my fault. They were like moving into a new shop, and we were like moving all these things around, and I just like, there's just so much stuff going on in the kitchen at all times. And you like,
yeah.
That's why whenever sorry.
I was going to say like, oh yeah, I've been burnt. I've put my whole hand on the grill before. Like you need to be prepared for whatever. Like it is a lot of shouting. And my the kitchen I was working in, actually while working on Not a Wolf, was maybe the size of this desk space that you see like within the camera. Like it was very, very small, and there had to be 4 people in there at all times. So it was a lot of like shouting, like to your right, to your left, behind you, in front of you. Like,
Yeah, I feel like it has to really work like super efficiently, especially in a small space like that. One of my very, very first jobs was I briefly worked at like an assisted living home in the kitchens. And I came in
oh,
one
wow.
day wearing shorts, and the woman who ran the kitchen was just like, "You're wearing like everything here is boiling. Everything
Yeah.
here is boiling at all times."
Literally, like you don't even need to be by the fryer for like hot acid to somehow get on you, on an uncovered part of you.
And I'm just like this weird gangly teen, like, well, I don't know. Like I mopped the freezer and the floor was too slippery for a couple of hours. Yeah, they don't really they don't train you a lot when you're that age. They just kind of like cut you loose. And that I did not have a lot of common sense. I think that was.
Well, yeah, every restaurant job treats you as if that is your 5th restaurant job, and you should know everything and know where everything is. And it's like the one that I ended up working in the kitchen was my first one, where I started as a server. And I was there from the day they opened to the day they closed, which is a fun story in itself. But it's like a whole thing.
Did you close the restaurant?
No, it's like part of an ongoing birthday curse that I have.
Oh, classic birthday curse scenario.
Yeah, classic birthday curse where the manager came in and was like, "Oh, I'm firing you all today without any notice."
Oh my God.
And all of us were like, "Okay, well, we're not going to cook anything today. And also, we're going to take everything out of the kitchen. It's ours now." So we basically just made a grocery list for like everybody who worked there, and would like split it up. And then I still have like, because it was a place with like a lot of like fancier stuff, and the other manager, not the owner, was just like, take what you want. We're just gonna, he really did a number on us this time, like just take whatever you want. So I ended up with like two $200 bottles of wine or something.
Whoa.
And some pretty nice locks for that week.
My only good like food heist from a workplace was I would just like slip my friends free cookies at the restaurant I worked at in college.
Oh yeah, anytime a friend came in, I would ask the kitchen to make them something. As long as we didn't have a bunch of orders come in and like, "Oh, I know you from down the street. I've seen you once before in the subway. Come in here. I'll give you some potatoes."
Yeah, exactly. It's like one of the few powers you have in that position. You're like, I am the person in charge of potatoes. I can make potatoes go wherever the potatoes need to go, and that feels nice. It's like a nice thing to do with your pals.
Back to Wolfie.
Yeah. I speaking.
It's so easy to get distracted.
Yeah, we were saying before we started this that Sage and I chat on the phone every now and then to catch up, and we always get on these very lovely tangents. So you're all along for the ride now.
Yes.
So back to the questions list, because I know there are more questions about jobs later on, so I don't want to hit anything we're gonna hit again.
Yeah, no spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers for later in this very same conversation. So this one's another one for both of us. Who would we say our biggest inspirations are in what we do?
Oh my gosh, so many for me.
Yeah, I feel like
go first, or should I go first?
Because I feel like there's like comedic inspirations, and then there's writing inspirations. Like on the comedic end of things, I feel like earliest on in my like comedy consuming life was like internet stuff. It was like Homestar Runner. It was like weird found Flash cartoons and things like that. And then as I got older,
the Ultimate Showdown.
Oh my God, Ultimate Showdown. I forgot about that. I used to like listen to that on like my old iPod. I downloaded that like awful little like MIDI song. Like,
yeah.
Because at that age, it was all so cool. It felt like people were just like making weird stuff. And there would be like popular Flash cartoons that were just like from a kid 2 towns over, and no one else knew who they were. Like there was this little cartoon called Hyperboy. I don't know if you ever saw that one. It was just about a little superhero kid who would eat a bunch of candy, and that was how he got his superpowers. And me and my high school friends were obsessed with it. And so we would talk about it every day. We'd eagerly await these new episodes. And we were like, what's taking so long? As though there was like a professional studio behind it. And it was just a kid in a couple towns over. And one time we found his screen name and we were all like messaging him to be like, dude, we love Hyperboy. It was just
my gosh.
And so like
that must have been so cool for him though. Like I remember when I first started posting comics on the internet, anybody who would like just comment, oh, I like this, I would be like, oh, I'm famous now. Everybody loves me.
Especially like early internet, that's how it felt. You would put something out there and it would get like 7 views and you would be like, oh my God, 7 people have watched this. That's the best. Like it was so exciting to like have something you made just suddenly be beamed into somebody else's life. You know, like before the internet, that wasn't something you could really do. Like if you made a comic, you'd have to like copy it and hand it to people or mail it out or, you know, it's.
When I was little, I used to make like little comics just in my notebook, and that notebook would just be the comic. I wouldn't copy it or anything. Like it wasn't like a zine situation where I would hand it out to other people because I wasn't that smart back then. But I was like, yes, this is my comic, Die Hard, the only Die Hard there will ever be.
Me and my buddy Charlie tried to make a movie called Watchmen. And then we got we put a video out for it that was like a trailer. It was about a neighborhood watch and everyone was a superhero. And we put out a trailer.
Oh, so close.
And it was just the two of us walking around the neighborhood wearing sunglasses, being goofs. And we got all these angry comments because it was called Watchmen trailer. And it was a couple years. It was like when the movie was being teased. And so this was like proto Snyderverse backlash, where it was just like all these angry people waiting for the Watchmen movie were furious that we had briefly made them so excited that they were going to get a new trailer. Because this was like,
oh my gosh.
So like,
I feel like nowadays I would love that so much if I was like Mortal Kombat trailer and it was just a couple kids.
Yeah.
Something completely unrelated.
That stuff gets buried now, I think. It's like the algorithm.
It does, yeah.
Where it's not like, it used to just be chronological. Like, I think that's really where things started to take a turn for social media. It was like, it used to just be everything was posted in the order that it was posted. And like, if it got big, it got big, but like there was some order to it. Whereas then once the algorithms all kicked in, then it was just like, oh, by the way, it just so happens that this person, you know, who's like in a movie, they have the big tweet today and you're going to have to see it 100 times. Like, and so all the weird stuff being made by like kids and like, you know, people who had no real experience just started getting buried around the margins. It's like, it's a bummer to see because that's the best part of the internet, you know, like when you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing this with Instagram Reels recently where I'll just scroll through and maybe every 5th video will be just one with like 5 likes. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to check this person out. And, you know, most of the time it's like, oh, they're doing a TikTok dance or whatever. But sometimes you get a gem. You get just the best little short film by a girl who loves horses.
I've heard that happens if you block every ad on like Twitter and Instagram, that if you start.
Really? Is it the same girl? I really hope it is.
Well, not the same girl, but I've heard you start to get like weirder and weirder niches of ad. And so it'll be like, you'll start to just get like stuff that somebody paid to promote, but they're not selling anything. They just want people to see it.
Oh, I love that when it's like somebody's selfie and they're just like hanging out on the beach today.
It's just like paid promotion at the bottom. The best one I've ever seen.
So much.
Someone reposted, it said, "You can't run forever, Tom Hanks." And it was just a guy's arms running down a hallway. And it's just implying he was facing Tom Hanks.
Maybe he is.
Why did he pay to promote?
No matter what direction you go in right now, you're going to be closer to Tom Hanks than you were before.
It's true. It's a really good way to think about life. We're all just chasing Tom Hanks, much to the chagrin of Tom Hanks, probably.
For me, like a lot of my inspirations, Lisa Hannawald's a huge one, obviously. I love her stuff so much. She's so funny.
So great.
Yeah, Jillian Tamaki is another cartoonist who I really, really enjoy, especially recently, who is more like horror or comedy shorts. Like they're like tiny vignettes of people's lives. It's really nice.
Oh, that's really neat.
Yeah, she's really good. Look her up. Get Boundless. Oh, hello. Speaking of Boundless, here's my cat.
Cameo.
This is Cannon. She tried to rip off her nipple yesterday.
Oh no.
She's fine. Don't worry. We took her to the vet. She's great. She's just kind of stupid. But Wolf's Rain was another huge one for me. Wolf's Rain is an anime. This is gonna sound a little edgy, so heads up. It's an anime where wolves are magic and they look like humans to humans, but to like wolves to special humans.
You really were a wolf kid growing up. You loved
I was such a wolf kid. I doodled wolves all over everything. I had like little hand puppet, so I grew up super duper poor, like couldn't afford toys poor. So like I would do this and like have like my own little like opera of wolves. So like this was one wolf and this was a different wolf.
That's incredible. So they sang like were they like opera, like making like
no, it was more like drama, I guess. It was that thing that like 13-year-olds think they're the edgiest kids on the planet, and they've foreseen, they've seen so much of life at 13 years. Like that was the reflection of my hand puppet times. Was just like way too serious, over the top, like drama for some reason. But me just like playing under my desk in the middle of school, being like, all right, this is one different wolf, and this is a different wolf, and this is a different wolf. There were like 6 characters, and I don't think any of them had names.
That's a wide variety of different wolves to be able to make with your hands, honestly. It's impressive.
There's this one, this one, this one, this one. He had spiky hair.
Oh, of course. Punk wolf.
This one where like this is like the head, and I'd walk around like that. That's the baby. That's like the cub. Yeah, I think that's it.
That's a good number of wolves. I kind of
it was an ensemble cast.
Whenever I would like space out in class or get bored, I would just start like imagining these like very elaborate like fantasy narratives that were usually like, very close to whatever I was reading or watching at the time. I was also like, I went through like a big period where I was like watching a lot of anime. Those were like the prime Toonami years when I was a kid. Like you could catch Dragon Ball Z and Yu Yu Hakusho. And
yeah.
Stretch. And so I definitely
Tenchi Muyo right at 3.
Mm-hmm. It was like you'd come home from school and it would just be like hours of solid TV. And then like as I got older, I got more into, that was like when comedy kind of became my primary focus for writing. It was like, because then that was like another big golden age of like TV comedy. Like you had 30 Rock, you had Scrubs, you had The Office. Like I felt like the big shows were all comedies. And so it was just like a lot of what you would talk about with your friends was just like whatever episode, of whatever comedy show you'd watch. And then like eventually Parks and Rec, like 30 Rock and Scrubs were definitely like the favorites for me. I was like a big Scrubs kid growing up.
Yeah, I was a big Scrubs kid too. I only watched it through Comedy Central, I think. Which now it's on TV Land. Isn't that wild? That now it's on TV Land? Like
so Scrubs is like the Brady Bunch now.
Yeah, Scrubs is like the Brady Bunch for millennials. I'm like,
oh, that has broken me. I guess it's like
because
20 years old.
Yeah. It's really old. Like I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, ooh, what I'm watching is on TV Land. I know I'm getting old. I say as a 27-year-old. But I was super into Scrubs. I was definitely more so of an anime kid where like I'd watch Sailor Moon. I was basically raised by TV because my mom was working a lot. So like I also didn't have a bedtime, so it was a very wild untamed wolf child. I was the feral wolf child.
So you got to see the night anime.
Yeah, I got to see the night anime. I got to watch Case Closed at 5 a.m. And then go to sleep for 2 hours and then get up for school. But yeah, and like Inuyasha is also very wolf centric. Like just a lot of what I watched was very wolf and dog centric.
It ended up working out so naturally, which actually that kind of leads into our third question because it's about the wolf research.
Yes.
The research we did into wolves. When I saw this question, I pulled out the book that I used for all my wolf related needs, which is this book called Wolves, a Wildlife Handbook.
Oh, good.
That I picked up. I forget where I even got it. I think I got it when I was like on a trip and it was at a used bookshop and I was just like, oh, this works perfectly. It even has like a chapter about not real wolves, but werewolves. Good. Which is pretty early in the book. I feel like it should have more thoroughly covered regular wolves before it got into werewolves.
They were like, we know why you're here.
But then it has all these great diagrams of just like wolves being really upset.
Oh.
In different ways. Like
that's wolf faces are so weird and hard to draw because of their necks. Like their necks are so weirdly long. This is all of the stuff, all the research I did was primarily wolf anatomy. And where I was working at the time was Indy City Co-op. So it was like a co-op space where like people would bring their dogs and stuff. So I would like have a dog there and be like, let me look at your paws for an hour.
I love that though. Because you would send me, as you were like trying out different like wolf anatomy and drawings, you would send me like various just different wolves doing stuff. It was so fun to occasionally just get like a wolf at the beach or like.
I really like, there was that one wolf with like a see-through mesh top and mascara. And it was like, I am not a girl. I think that was my favorite.
Ready to go out on the town.
Yes.
A lot of my research, I feel like I oversell how in-depth it was, because a lot of it would come down to just Googling, like, because there's a lot of parts where the wolf either eats something or is near something. I just being like, how would a wolf react if he, say, ate tiramisu? How would that go for him? And the answer is poorly.
Probably diarrhea.
The answer is almost always poorly. Unfortunately, they don't get to eat like any of the stuff that we eat, which it has to be a bummer if you're a wolf, I guess. But then, they don't know. And so it was like a lot of Googling what wolves and dogs can and cannot eat, which felt very academic in the moment.
I feel like that's like training you to be a dog owner.
Yeah, eventually. I'm very prepared now. I know grapes are no-go. You don't want to give an animal a grape. Onions are bad.
I don't think they'd eat onions anyway because they're stinky, I think they're like so sensitive.
It's like, so I think they like smelling them are probably just like, oh yeah, that would be really bad for me.
Yeah, for me, a lot of it was just looking at pictures of wolves, looking at like trying to act out what a wolf would do. I did a lot of that.
Just
when in doubt, when in doubt, use your mouth. That's the wolf rule. Because if he can't do it with his paws like this, he has to do it with his mouth. That's, because their back legs don't really have that much mobility.
Yeah, there's the one scene where the main character has to use a pen. And I was just like, sure, you could balance it a little bit, but like, I feel like
he has to
would be partially like keeping it, in the mouth just to like balance the back of it,
Yeah, well, and especially like wolves, their front teeth are so tiny that they have to like really like clench down and like put their necks like in their being to actually be able to do it. And that's the thing too, is I never realized how big wolves are. They're so big. Of course, like my only reference was anime, right? Because I was an anime kid, and they draw wolves the same as normal dogs. No, they are so big. They're so huge. Much bigger than normal dogs.
My frame of reference was the zoo, so I had a pretty good idea. I was like a big zoo kid, so like I very much went to zoo camp growing up. I went to zoo.
When you say zoo camp, I imagine they put like they're like, okay, you live in the zoo now with the animals.
Yeah, it was all just a grift to get my parents some time off. I was like too riled up, and so they just like put me in with the giraffes for a little bit. But it was this camp basically where they just like would teach you about animals all morning, and then all afternoon they'd like walk the kids around the zoo and show you like different parts of the zoo. It was very fun. And so yeah, I was like a big animal kid, and so I knew like a lot of like random facts about wolves. But I would say like of the animals I was obsessed with as a kid, wolves were like a later thing. I was like a big tortoise kid. Turtles and tortoises were big for me when I was really little. I was like very obsessed with them. I don't even particularly know why. I think it's just because it's cool that they get really
They're
old.
Nice.
It's like the energy.
They're little sweet little animals. I like the ones with the snoots. You know the ones. You know the ones with the snoots.
Oh, trust me, I know the ones.
Yeah, I was basically like friend to all horse girls. I feel like that's the rule: is you have a wolf kid and a horse girl, and that they're either best friends or worst enemies. There's no in between.
It's it's just like a survival pairing where it's just like
yes,
all skills are covered between those two types.
Yes, we got running down, we got teeth down. I actually know an unfortunate amount of horses because I took a horse anatomy class in college, which was like a basically like week-long crash course of horse anatomy, and those animals are so cursed. Like, I love horses in concept, but in practice, I hate horses.
In practice,
I hate horses.
They're like, a great idea.
If you put a horse in front of me, I'm like, no, thank you, take it away. I
reject this idea.
Yes, but if you show me a picture of a horse, like a real life horse, I'll be like, yes, good job.
I feel like if they were about this big, I would be thrilled.
Mini horses are fine.
Like a really little fella that you could put in like a backpack, like a Chihuahua-sized horse, I think would be a delight.
I think like fjord horses are okay, where they're kind of big, but they're not that big. They're like Scandinavian horses.
Sizes, I think.
I think cats could be bigger. I'll say it. I'm not afraid to say it.
They do make big ones of those, and they're very scary.
But I mean, like domestic cats.
Yeah. Although, have you ever had your cat do?
I'm not trying to be Lion King, or Tiger King. I'm not trying to be Lion King either. I'm not trying to kill my dad killed by my uncle or anything. I'm not trying to have that happen.
Yeah, it's not an ideal situation to be in, honestly. It's not fun to do a nature Hamlet.
Yeah.
I feel like with cats, there's always that moment where it pounces on you and you're just like, oh, you thought that was going to kill me. You thought that I would be food now.
What cats are you meeting? I've never had that.
My cat was a big pouncing cat. She like would hide under stuff and then just kind of come after you. And so that always to me felt like I was like, oh, if you were 4 times your size, I would not be here anymore at all.
See, my cats are more like dogs where they will literally sit and lick you for like an hour. They just like to lick. I don't know why. It's weird too. It's like sandpaper.
They must get some. It must be relaxing, I guess. It's like combing your hair for a really long time.
Yeah, I guess I'm just their little like Barbie that they like to brush.
So our next question is there anything you are currently reading or read recently that you really enjoyed?
Everything. Yeah. I read so much stuff. You know what? Actually, I really enjoy many things. I have like a bunch of comics next to me because I always have comics next to me.
It's a good place to keep comics.
Oh, you know what? This is good too. Yeah. So let's see what I got here. I have Dear John by Laura Lanes. It is a horror comic about kind of surviving a parasitic relationship while mirroring it with disease. It's really interesting. heads up, if you have that fear of like holes, though, don't read this if you have that. Because there's a lot of very, very graphic imagery in here that maybe you will be too scared of.
Last
And
couple.
Space Chick, Volume 1 by Nicolette Wood. She actually works on Toucan Birdie now.
Oh, nice.
And she doesn't really do comics that much. I think she does like a few strips now and then, but overall doesn't do that many comics anymore. But it's just like a space opera about this space chick. She's very sassy. I like her.
Very cool. The big one that I read recently that I really loved was I'm a big Patricia Lockwood fan. I'm a fan of anybody who can write really great stuff online and then take that same mentality into, fiction and nonfiction for, obvious reasons. It's something I look up to a lot in a writer. And she just wrote this book called Nobody's Talking About This. That's about the main character is like just a very online person who's like very mired in the language and like daily narrative of the internet. And she's just kind of going about her life where she goes around and gives talks about new media to people, and like old people yell at her because they think she's wrong, and young people think she's like already uncool. It's like there's this she gets like both sides of the internet argument at these talks she does. And so it's basically just about like being mired in that world. And then the second half of the book takes this hard left turn. There's like a big event in her personal life. I don't want to spoil in case anyone wants to read it, but it very immediately demands her attention outside of the internet, and it can't be joked about. It can't be looked at ironically. It can't be memed. It's just this like big personal event that pulls her out of this other world into the real one. And it's just like such a brutal tonal change, and it like makes you rethink the role the internet plays in your own life while you're reading it. It's like super moving and also very funny. Like she really nails the like cadence of like how it feels to be online, just like stressful but funny at the same time.
Yeah.
And so
I was gonna say that sounds very strangely relatable.
Yeah, I found it super relatable. While obviously I hadn't like experienced anything close to what the main character had, like, in the latter half. It's like it's very relatable in the way that it makes you contrast the life you live online to the life you're living out in the world. And so I think it's definitely worth the read if you've liked any of Patricia Lockwood's like poetry or nonfiction or anything like that before. Her stuff is always very funny, always like very to the point. It's like she has just this very cool style. So that, trying to think of other stuff I've read recently. I really liked Sam Talent wrote a book called Running the Light about the road stand-up scene, like that whole world. And it's just this like very dark Cormac McCarthy-esque take on like a miserable old comedian just like barely staying alive, and like very like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, very like, you're watching a person go through a nightmare, and the main character is like a very not great person. So if you don't like that type of story, obviously it can be a harder read, but Sam's style is really great, and he's a very talented writer and comedian. He's a double threat. And I really dug that as well. I read that over the summer.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Just, I guess it's a personal question. But like, so you primarily did stand up, right? How would you describe like the emotional difference between doing stand up and then having the book release? Does that question make sense? Should I rephrase it?
No, I think I get it. They're two very, very different feelings, because stand-up is all about that immediacy where, I mean, obviously you write your jokes over time and there's like slow progress forward, but each individual show, you're kind of, you have like the 5 minutes before where you're getting, like psyched up, you have the show, and then you have whatever comes after, depending on if the show was good or bad. It's all very self-contained, and unless you're a famous person, usually after you're done, your sets just kind of like vanish into the wind. So it all feels like very temporary. which I liked about that, especially like when I was doing the most stand-up was probably like 2014 to 2016, I'd say. Like I was doing a ton in Chicago there, and then I moved to LA where I did more writing, less stand-up once I moved out here. But I would say like the big change with a book is just that I finished the first draft of the book in late April of 2019. And so at this point, it is about 2 years old as I am watching a lot of people hold it in their hands for the first time, which as a sort of like perfectionist type with my writing is like a little mortifying because it's just old enough where you can look back at your own work and be like, I would do this differently. I would do that differently.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel that way with the illustrations.
Yeah, it's like, well, because you can advance so much in just a couple of years, you know, in any field. And so I think like there's definitely this weirdness to seeing something that's been complete for a long time and then like the process of getting it out into the world just being very long. And I wouldn't even call it bad. It's just interesting because because then once it's out there too, it exists physically forever. Like it's out there.
Yeah.
In the world, copies of it will sit on people's shelves. Like it is a thing with, you know, our names on it. It's just going to be out there. And
yeah, it's like a delayed gratification. Like when you see other people talking about it, it's like, oh, I did that. But then it's like, all right, that's it. You know what I mean? It's not a feeling that I'm used to personally.
No, same here.
Because most of my comics are published online, and you know it's usually a week turnaround for drawing it to it being published. Sometimes 2 weeks. That's usually the max I have to wait, unless it's like an anthology or something. So it's definitely a strange feeling, and weirdly like makes it easier to let go of the mistakes that I see now. At least for me, like I can look at a wolf drawing and be like, oh well, that's not how that works, but that's fine because I was a different person back then. Do you feel yourself having the same type of forgiveness or no?
Definitely. I don't find myself really like haranguing myself for any like writing errors that I find. It's more so just like, oh, if I were to do that now, I would like use language a little differently here, or I would, you know, trim up this sentence a little bit and get to the point faster because it's, you know, funnier with this, or I would expand on this a little bit more because this thought is funnier when you dig in a little deeper. But a lot of it feels more like an opinion thing, you know, where it's like, I feel like anything I make, I would change at some point. I would change about it.
Same. That's like the scary thing about having a book come out is like, oh, it could always be better.
Yeah, and there's, you know, sometimes like the director's cut of a movie will come out and it'll suck. And so it's like, I think there's like a reason that, you know, sometimes you put something out and you're just like, it's in the form that it's in and it's, you know, I'm happy with it. It's good. And there's always going to be little tweaks or things I would do, but like I'm glad that it was, you know, taken and put out into the world, because otherwise you could just keep something forever.
Yeah, I feel like we met each other at the right time for this book to come out the way I feel as the illustrator that it was supposed to be. Does that make it?
Yeah, no, I mean,
I feel like I keep talking in cryptic metaphors and I'm like, oh no.
No.
Am I the Sphinx cat?
No, I think it did very much come together kind of exactly the way I had like hoped that it would when we started working together. I think like the earliest offers that came in on the book were very much like a here's some tweets and some illustrations thing. And I wanted it to feel more narrative for both of us.
It definitely was. Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's what we got. We got like
you can kind of see the wolf grow bit through bit a little bit.
Yeah, and I really like getting to see that in the project, and I'm glad that we were able to kind of ride the roller coaster that it took to get it to where it was, because it was a very long process, like finding a home for it and then, you know, getting it funded and then finding a publisher. It was very much there was lots of change constantly. I feel like we were constantly emailing just like, all right, so I got this thing from this person and now everything's different. And like that would happen every 3 weeks for a while there. And then once we like got settled in and had a publisher and a date, then it kind of got to this point where I almost was like, I didn't know what to do. And it's kind of what I've been experiencing today, where I'm just like, this has been such a focus for so long. It's been such a like fixture in my life that now that it's out there, I'm like, I thought it would be like an, oh God, what do I do now type of thing. But I'm finding myself just like very relaxed, where it's like, all right, the part that I do is done. And now that you guys have to read words.
Yes. Now you have to tell us what you think.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, there's something very nice about that, because then it's like, we're free to work on whatever we want next. And to like, I think that's where the propensity to want to change things comes in, where it's like, I don't want to change the Wolf book. I want to change whatever I do next. I want to take whatever from the Wolf book I feel like could have been better, and I want to make it better in whatever the next project is. But if I were to go back and try to change any aspect of it, the whole thing could fall apart. It's, I think things kind of end up as what they are, and that's how they're supposed to be. And I'm inclined to believe that the book is exactly what the book should be, and I'm glad that it's out there.
There's a paradox in webcomics specifically. That's like, you do a webcomic over a certain amount of years, right? Or like even a few months. You improve over the course of that time. Do you choose to redo those first few chapters?
Ooh.
And the answer should be no, because that's kind of a time capsule of where you were. And by doing that, you're kind of setting yourself up to basically redo all the pages again. I feel like a lot of the times when you see more successful webcomics come into print, like He Is a Good Boy by Casey Green, even though the end style isn't necessarily like the picture perfect, the opposite. The beginning style isn't the picture perfect style that it was in the ending. Like, seeing an artist evolve like that, or in a writer's case, seeing a writer evolve their style like that throughout a book, I feel like is an experience a reader should cherish. You're watching somebody grow, and like, how often do you get to see a real life person do that with their skills, right?
Yeah, totally. It's very communal, and which is the best part of art, I think, is building a community around something. It's nice, I think, to be able to feel like you were there when it was new, like when everything was still itself out. Speaking of, we have a question in the chat about the format. How did you decide to do this as a choose your path story, and did that make it more complicated to write? The choose your own path thing is something that I thought after this one project I would be like, all right, that was fun, and now on to something else. But I'm finding myself very obsessed with it. I really love. I decided to do it because I love, like, for comedies, I think it allows you to tell so many different jokes. I think it allows you to tell jokes that aren't just in the text itself, but are then made, like, it can shine a whole different light on a joke just by having an alternate version of the joke appear somewhere else. And like, it changes the way you look at both. And so the way the person chooses to read through it, it makes it so that each person's experience with it is slightly different. And like, each person can like see things in different lights and feel like they have some ownership over the delivery of the jokes. And so that was just very exciting to me. And I was curious if it would be as exciting in practice as it was in theory. And it was, like, outlining it was a blast. It made the story really fun to approach. It made it easier to like look at something and be like, all right, like, I want to try this weird thing, but I'm not sure I want to like pivot the whole story to be around it. So instead, I'm going to make it one potential branch. It lets you just like try more, and which, in a more standard piece of fiction, obviously you can't use this format with everything. But when you're writing a story that's where it's designed to make people laugh, having more ways in which the story can make people laugh, I think is a plus. And like, on top of that, like, a big part of the character is just about how very small things can have these very large effects, which is like an old trope of the format of just like, oh, any wrong move and you can fall into a pit or something.
Yeah. The flap of a butterfly's wings.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was the butterfly effect with Ashton Kutcher.
Yes. I haven't thought about that movie in a minute.
Yeah, I think I saw it like a couple of times in high school. I think I got that one from like Netflix DVDs back when I was like super young.
Ooh, ye oldie format.
Yeah. And so it was definitely complicated to write in the choose your path format, but it's not something I would be averse to doing again. I think for comedy, it is a really rich format with a lot of options. I think if I were writing something more serious, something more dramatic, or just something, that I was trying to just not an overt comedy. I think then I would probably stick to a more standard format. But at least for comedy, I'm very curious, like what else can be done in the Choose Your Path format.
Yeah, I feel like Choose Your Own Adventure is so good for both comedy and horror because the reader has to get so invested in the character, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're controlling this other person's or wolves life, like. And, because of that, it sort of makes it easier for the reader to project themselves onto that character. Yeah, I don't know. There's a certain amount of like suspense that comes with the format, like inherently.
Yeah, I think it builds this investment of the self in the character too, which with a character like the wolf, you are supposed to be projecting a lot of yourself onto it because the wolf is supposed to be relatable. Like, in other stories, I could see it being hard to build up like a well fleshed out narrator when the narrator is essentially the person reading. But in something like the wolf story, like the wolf is supposed to be like a very relatable, person. And so I think it makes the story easier to dive into because you feel like you're living I think in a lot of ways, like we all kind of have I feel like there's a lot of little parts of it that, despite the fact that it's a wolf navigating that part of the story, I think there's plenty to relate to in there.
Literally, like, who hasn't dropped conditioner in the shower and been like,
Yeah.
Like in the morning, like.
I think looking at the time here, we got about 3 minutes left. So I'm trying to see if we have anything.
Oh, speed run question.
We did. Yeah. Like a real quick question. I guess we could do the other, this is like a fairly, oh wait, we just got one in the chat. Can you give us a sneak peek of anything you're working on now? Is there a future for the wolf? For me, I haven't written anything new for the wolf yet. This story definitely feels like a culmination of what I've wanted to do with the character for a very long time. And so I think I'm going to like sit with it, see how people feel about it, and see how I feel about it now that I like have it out in the world, and then like wait for a second before creating anything new for the wolf. But I do have a couple of other projects that I'm working on right now. Nothing I can talk about too directly, but I am outlining a second Choose Your Path comedy at the moment. And all I can really say about it is that it takes place at the end of the world. And so that is, so it's a little more sci-fi than this original one. So it's definitely different. It's very exciting though. I've been having a lot of fun playing with it. That's why I said I've been having so much fun with the format, is because I'm in the outlining process again. And it's so fun to just draw all the boxes and like there's a no wrong.
Oh yeah, I love when we were working on Wolf, I love that you gave me the map.
Yeah.
Of like all the branches. It's so satisfying to see it all laid out.
Yeah, and in the beginning it's even more chaotic because there are some branches that'll just never make it to the page, but it's like you've got to see it all in front of you before you can really figure out what's not worth the time. Some of them I'll sit down, I'll get 2 sentences in, and I'll just be like, all right, this is not it. But it's a very fun part to be at. I love outlining. I love the beginning of a project where you're just like trying to keep up with your own ideas and like get them all down. I find those periods to be like very gratifying in between periods of like writer's block where you're just like, oh God, I'll never do anything creative again. Like you got to write everything down in the good periods so that you have food for when the
Yes. Yeah. For me, unfortunately, I can't talk about anything I'm working on right now. I am living that NDA life. But I can say that I have some stuff coming out later this year that I think is pretty cool and exciting. That's all I can say is that I can't even say what it is. But yes, I do have things that I'm working on, not wolf related. But they are animal related. That's what I'll say. I love the animals.
We've talked about the things, so I'm just like nodding, like yeah, like they're. But yeah, I think that takes us to 6:30, so I don't want to run over and take up anybody's time. Unless we have time for more, in which case we could do a Q&A in the chat. I mean, I'm
Dan, what's your socials? How can people follow you and purchase the book? Find out more about the wolf.
I am on Twitter at It's Dan Sheehan. The wolf is on Twitter at Sick of Wolves. My website is dansheehan.fyi. There are like so many other Dan Sheehans. I couldn't get dansheehan.com. I'm working on it. We're figuring it out. There's like 2 other Dan Sheehans who publish books, so it's like I'm gonna have to figure that out at some point.
Are they comedians too?
They're not comedians, luckily. Like one of them does nonfiction about the military, and the other is a fiction writer. So it's just like we cover a wide spread, but also it's making the people at Goodreads want to vomit, I think, because it's just constantly like each book being attributed to the wrong person.
They're like, wow, this Dan Sheehan sure is prolific.
Yeah, we're gonna get together and have a Dan Sheehan conference and just see if anything positive comes out of it. We're gonna all go on like a big road trip, the 3 of us, and it'll be beautiful.
And write a book about it.
Yeah, we'll write a book about it and fight for decades over which Dan Sheehan is in the byline. It'll just say one.
Yes.
And then if you want to find me, my website's dansheehan.fyi, and then it has every single thing from me that you could possibly want to see. It's got videos, old writing, and there's a link to buy the book on there now as of today as well. So it's all
there's
there.
Also a link in the chat to buy it from
there's
our kind host.
You got to support Unabridged. Unabridged was my favorite shop when I lived in Chicago, and I'm like super thrilled that we got to do this event here. It's so fun to have gotten to do this. Sage, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Sage Coffey. Coffey is Coffey. Yes, it's my real last name. You can find me on Instagram at Sage M Coffey. I couldn't get Sage Coffey. It's taken by a bot. Wow. Report them, please. My website is sagecoffey.com. You can read almost all of my comics in their entirety on there for free. You can also see some like animation pre-production stuff I've worked on and some illustration stuff I've done for other things. I have an online shop where you can buy mini comics. And that is, if you go to my website, it's just the shop link. But yeah, that's me.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you everybody so much for coming. It's the link to the book is up there in the corner. It's on my website. It's on, it's in every local bookshop imaginable, but especially at Unabridged. I believe they have a ton of signed copies. Yes. So if you're local to Chicago, please check them out if you've never been, or even if you have. It's such a great spot. And we're so thankful to them for having us here.
We're so honored that you guys chose to do your book launch here with us too. So thank you both for and like they said, if you click on that link that's in the chat, you're welcome to order copies of the book for pickup. If you're not around and want one of the signed copies, you can also place your order there and we'll be happy to ship you one. So
incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So thank you everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
To Dan and Sage for talking about I Am Not a Wolf.
Have a great night, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Sweet dreams when you go to bed.